And then the same day, I ended up watching Devil Wears Prada too. And, woof, woof. First of all, if I'm gonna go like very, very top level, this is almost a betrayal of Devil Wears Prada 1 and its ending. The character arc that Anne Hathaway characters go for that film is essentially betrayed by Devil Wears Prada 2. In a sense, it's a meta critique, which there's some more discussions I could potentially have on that, so this might end up as a little bit longer of a section. But in terms of the synopsis, so the film picks up many years later after the West Prada 1, where character played by Anne Hathaway ends up having a very successful career as a journalist, and during the moment where she receives an award, she and the rest of her team receive a notification that they are laid off, so she is forced to look for another job, which ends up with her becoming back in the Runway magazine, and where she navigates the complexities of contemporary corporate life in America and the economic the economic environment. That is synopsis, and that's what I mean in terms of the meta critique, because it is a critique of how easily people can betray their convictions. But this would only work if Anne Hathaway's character show any dislike of the situation, because she makes some throwaway remarks of how this is just a stepping stone back as she tries to look for another job to go back to like real journalism, as she calls it. But then she starts trying to do real journalism for the sake of Runway as a magazine, and apparently she finds some success in that, and that seems so far-fetched because the film pokes fun at how the current attention scale economy is so focused on engagement, on performance metrics, whatnot, where real journalism has no room to exist. But then somehow it does have the room to exist and be successful, and then it pokes fun at the current corporate climate where there's so much consolidation, there's so much job cutting and cost cutting, that we're in a late stage cycle of capitalism where it's a race to the bottom, where it's no longer about bringing more value, it's about appeasing the shareholders, it's about bringing the cost as much as possible. It's just cost value economics of it all, rather than instead of the value based economics of giving the best product possible to the consumer and keep them that way. There's only so few corporations that seem actually focused on that. Like, think of your Adobe, who will siphon every single cent out of their user base, to something like DaVinci, the film editing software that will be used to edit this in particular, which is now, and that is completely free to use, but they do have a studio license that you can buy and is for you to own forever. It's just in that absolutely crazy to fathom, where everything is a subscription now. There is an industry-leading software where you just buy a license and that's that. They have their own ways of course, bringing additional revenue and bringing value to customers, and this is essentially a critique of that, or it tries to be, but it doesn't really do it in a meaningful way. It makes fun of billionaires, where there's like one billionaire that is so stupidly self-absorbed, and another billionaire that is just using corporate jargon, ends up inheriting the Runaway as a magazine as part of the rest of the corporate portfolio from his father, but doesn't know how to do anything meaningfully and just wants to, get more value out of things. But then at the end of the day, it ends up there is another savior of a billionaire, because there is a billionaire woman who, billionaires are actually the good guys, but only if they're a woman. So the film tries to have a critique of billionaires, but no, there are some good billionaires, and only if they're a woman, I suppose. It's just too disjointed in terms of its messaging of whether it's trying to say anything, because it really is not trying to say anything. It is of its time shoddily put together script that was done for just to be in time for the 20th anniversary of the first film, which came out in 2006. So yeah, as a result, we end up in a thematically confused film. It has very, very, very misplaced comedy that tries to poke fun at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but in a very patronizing way. And also Meryl Streep's performance here, her character has been so diluted, and that's is kind of poked fun at in terms of like kind of like woke culture. It is trying to appease everyone, by that it's not appeasing anyone. It is, I don't know how that was packaged up and people seem to be enjoying that. People like the idea of woke more than they actually like being woke. Or now being anti-woke is the new woke apparently. What is going on right now? If I was to sum up everything that Devil Wears Prada 2 ends up saying, you will have any job and you will feel lucky having it. That's just then you will be grateful, because at the end of the day, I guess I've gone on discussing Devil Wears Prada 2 at length now, essentially to where I have spoiled the full film, maybe in one way or another. But there ends up being a very happy ending to the film, which I think end up very unearned and feels like a betrayal of Anne Hathaway's character, the main character of the film, from where she ended the first film to now the second film. Is just it's a complete betrayal. The film looks horrible. All that digital cinematography, flat lighting is very, very of its time, very contemporary. It could have been dropped on Netflix. Nobody would have even noticed if that happened. But of course, there was some marketing push behind it with Diet Coke as well. So yeah, it just could have been so much more, but I guess it couldn't have, because there's no reason for this film to exist, because the film was over with the first film. The character arc was complete, and now we've brought it back. Now we've tried to have a message with it, and the film could not really commit to the message. It just tried to have some idea that is very timely, but then it doesn't meaningfully portray it in a realistic sense. In a way, I hated this film to the same extent that I hated The Pursuit of Happiness, because I don't think it is a very meaningful exploration of an idea, where it's so isolated to the point of just being this exploration of the American dream that, if you try hard enough, you will achieve anything. If you try hard, if you bring something that is actually valuable, people will like that. People will resonate with that. But that's just not how actually anything works. And to portray that idea as something for people to inspire to sell them this lie in the cinema. And that's what I hate about Hollywood cinema so much, because it is this wish gratification of seeing these great things happen on the screen that gives you, as a viewer, this dopamine, and then it lulls you back to sleep, because you're like, oh, you see, good things can happen. Yes, but they're not gonna happen to you because you're too busy watching shit from Hollywood pumped into your eyeballs through the big screen or like through your little screen, and then you just kind of end up not doing anything. And that's everything that Devil Wears Prada 1 is not. Next up, we have Wednesday, 6th of May, Devil Wears Prada. Devil Wears Prada 2 was coming out, and I planned to watch that on Thursday, and the cinema that I ended up going to, it broke down. So I actually had to go on Saturday. Devil Wears Prada 1, a Hollywood film from the 2000s. You know, you get your beautiful film grain, actual depth and lighting. It's very iconic. I've seen parts of Devil Wears Prada played on TV so many times, but I never sat down to properly watch it. So this was my first actual proper watch of Devil Wears Prada from beginning to end. So the synopsis for Devil Wears Prada 1, it follows a woman who ends up getting a job as a personal assistant, head of a very influential fashion magazine in New York, and she has to figure out her priorities in terms of her life, whether she wants to use this as a career ladder in terms of getting the job that she wants, or be consumed by the brutality of corporate American life. That's essentially how I would sum that up. essentially a criticism of capitalism, specifically fashion, but it explores how fashion is important and how certain people do have that appreciation for it, but also how the corporate world and how capitalism takes away some of that magic there. It's not completely black and white, it has that gray morality to it. So I do appreciate how it explores the gray area in terms of the consumers, the product, and the people that facilitate that, and the allure of it, and the way it corrupts the soul, and if you allow it to. So it does end up as a bit of a moral tale, and then this is like coming of age, of adult age. Maybe coming of age is in a teenager age, yeah. Coming of puberty is like, oh, it's just a puberty film. It's a puberty film versus this is like an actual coming of age film. You know what? This is it. I'm gonna go on a big campaign, propaganda campaign, to rebrand all coming of age film into puberty films, and I will specifically work on the new ethos of what a coming of age means, and Devil Wears Prada will be my thesis for what a coming of age film is. I don't know, a coming of corporate age, I don't know. I'm still workshopping this. We'll circle back to this, you know, going back into the corporate jargon. That was a big pivot. I'm not sure how much of that will be edited out, just because that was a complete train wreck of a thought that was just going. It was unchecked, completely unprompted, completely unscripted. Maybe there were some nuggets of information. Most of this was a very long, elaborate joke anyway. That's, in a nutshell, it's the reflection of the current culture. Which, and also, by the way, I can tell that Devil Wears Prada 2 is a by the numbers film because it has a romantic subplot. Just because there is no chemistry between that Australian guy and Anne Hathaway. It's lazily written in there because it knows that it needs to give a very happy ending to Anne Hathaway's character, and that film needs to have a romantic subplot. Because otherwise, what? I've gone on in length discussing why I hate Devil Wears Prada 2, and I think it is actually something interesting of a film because I think there is enough there to serve as a meta critique, and how we've gone from 2006 to 2026. What has changed? Cinema has changed. ID tagged movies. Right. Yeah, and this was completely unscripted. I probably could have done a better job of summarizing all of this as a standalone video, because I think there would have been enough there, but maybe I will do that at one point. But as it stands, this is like a very unscripted, heavily edited probably section, so I hope that this did not come across too ranty and had a cohesive idea behind it. Yeah, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed Devil Wears Prada 2, I can see why you enjoyed it. In a sense, I kind of enjoyed parts of it too, but I think that you deserve better. I think all of us deserve better. I think that Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, and Emily Blunt got a very big paycheck, and I'm happy for them. But that's that. So yeah. Yeah, well, I hope that some of the other films, if you stick around, I hope that you will learn of some great films that you can watch instead of this, and then you will too be critical of the films that you watch and the products that corporate America, that Hollywood tries to sell you. Bye-bye!